This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good morning. Welcome to andBeyond Phinda Private Game Reserve. As you can see, we are following down the road.
Good morning everybody, and a warm welcome to andBeyond and Ngala. I'm taking my beanie off. It's starting to warm up already. It's really nice to see the conditions warming up so fast, which is really exciting. Like I said, we're here on Ngala. My name is Eric and behind camera is Owen. And this morning we are driving parallel down towards the riverbed to see what we can find this morning. We can hopefully be expecting some cool elephant sightings along the river as we're driving along there, and then we are heading into the direction of where the tracks of the Pride were last left. So that Pride of Lions was basically straight up ahead of us. Their tracks yesterday morning were walking down, and so we're hoping that if they're not around a waterhole, maybe they've headed back down towards the riverbed. It's been quite a while since I've last seen them. I think it's been about 4 or 5 days now, so I'm very excited to try and catch up to them and hopefully see them if we can. It's quite misty at the moment, and it's going to help us quite a lot when we're looking for tracks, because the mist is just going to start settling down onto the ground, and then it will leave this layer of moisture. And if the tracks are on top of that moisture, we know the tracks are very, very fresh. Or maybe if the tracks are a little bit older and the moisture's on top of the tracks, sorry, you'll see OD wiping the lens every now and again. It is just because we're passing through this quite dense patch of moisture. So if the tracks are on top of the moisture, they're very, very, very fresh. If they're not, then they're from a little bit later on in the evening. So we can put the puzzle pieces together ready from there and see what we can find this morning. It's always exciting coming out in the early mornings because you get that element of unknown. You know, what's been happening over the last 12 hours? Has the Pride made a kill? Has a leopard successfully chased a hyena away from its carcass and managed to take it up a tree? There's a whole bunch of possibilities out here, and that's why starting early before the sun comes up is one of the best things to do. The sun is just not quite peeking up. So it's, whilst we're driving nice and slowly, you can see that beautiful color. I think James is waiting to say good morning.
Yes, it is a lovely coppery, goldeny type of a morning here at Djuma Private Game Reserve on the western fringes of the Greater Limpopo Trans-Frontier Park. Sorry, I'm just trying to get me binoculars out so that I can identify that bird view. My name is James Henry. It's quite cool this morning. David is on camera. There is his gloved hand. And there is a bird over there waiting for the sun as we are to warm ourselves. Please remember, do talk to us using the hashtag WildEarth, or for the first 45 minutes, of course, kids' questions at WildEarth. Describe this as a very unenthusiastic dawn chorus, 1 or 2 hornbills, and then you can hear the plaintive whistle of the African harrier hawk. There are 2 of them calling to each other. There's a couple of mouse birds. Grey-headed sparrow. Unenthusiastic fanfare from the Franklin's today.
This is not one of the harrier hawks.
I don't think so. David, if that is a harrier hawk, it is a dwarf harrier hawk. Oh, hang on a second. It's behind. It is one, yes, well done. There is one of the harrier hawks. It's very upset about something. It's mournful whistling. So there are two of them singing to each other. In fact, there are three. One's just alighted from the tree in which that one was sitting, or is sitting. There we go. Off it goes to wreak terror on some poor piece of prey. Right, we shall continue up to the north to see if we can find sign of the wild dogs who have a den nearby. Unfortunately not on this reserve, but they may come hunting here. You're going to go and say hello to Lauren, of course, who's used to weather of this nature.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a chilly safari drive. We were trying to give you a view of the sunrise, but unfortunately we can't get the gap that we are looking for. But first things first, my name is Lauren and I do have BK on camera today, and we are hoping to find some leopards. I am always hoping to find some leopards, but today I really want to see them. So we're looking forward to answering all your questions. I hope James gets lucky with the dogs. There's a special pack of dogs that have puppies at the minute, and they keep bouncing between boundary lines, which means they do keep popping onto our property. So I'm just about to head to a junction. Now, this is a very good junction to check for tracks because lots of animals move this way. It gives direct access to the south, direct access to the west, and it can sort of take you right into the centre of the property. So it's always a really, really good place to check to see if anybody's been moving. And if you check it every single day, then you know what tracks are new and what tracks are not. So I always just spend a little bit of time looking at the grounds here. Not very interesting, I know, but this is how we learn everybody's movements. I don't see a single thing. Nope, nobody has moved this way. Interesting. We're still going to head south and see what we can find. Troy, you are asking, why are boy animals bigger than girl animals? Mostly this is the case, but not always. So if you look at hyenas, for example, one of my favorite animals is actually the females, the girls that are much bigger than the boys. So it really depends on a lot of factors, Troy. You have to think of the animal's behavior, how they live. Do they live in a group, a clan, a pack, a pride, or are they solitary, like a leopard? Then you also have to think about their reproduction. How do they reproduce? Is it more beneficial for the females to be smaller, or is it more beneficial for the females to be bigger? Now, if you think of some spiders, yes, spiders, the females are always larger. BK, look at this sunrise. It's not quite popped up yet, but look at this. You can see all these sort of mist rising up. We're quite high up at this point, and you can see the sunrise. So, Troy, if you think of spiders, the females are actually bigger because they need to be. They are the ones that produce eggs, and the main sort of drive in their life is to reproduce. Whereas the males, they need to always stay hidden, stay camouflage, scuttle around, and avoid the females, because with spiders, the females can actually eat the males when they're not very happy with them. Yes, can you believe it? Oh, look, it's coming. Oh, isn't that amazing? So yes, when a female spider is hungry, the male will try to mate with her and she eats him. Sometimes he tries to distract her by giving her a food parcel. So she's eating, then he quickly mates with her and runs away. So for spiders, it's way more beneficial for the females to be much bigger. But of course, this is not the case throughout the animal kingdom. For hyenas, it's more advantageous for the females to be bigger because it's a female-dominated society. The females lead. They're led by a matriarch. But this is not always the case. Isn't this gorgeous, everyone? See how quickly it comes up? The center of the solar system. A big ball of gas. Now, the sun is pretty much the most important source of energy for life on planet Earth. Everything around us depends on the sun, including us. Life would not survive without it. And when you think of size, the sun accounts for around 99% of the mass of the solar system. So all the other planets that we know only make up that 1%. It's around 330,000 times bigger than Earth, the sun. That just gives you a little bit of an indication of size. Marlo, you're 9 years old and you're asking, why is the sun shimmering? I think it's an illusion of light. So the landscape is changing because the sun is now appearing above the horizon. So it looks like it's shimmering because it's just an illusion of light. There's moisture in the air. There's mist rising up from the ground because it's been so cold. Hot air rises, cold air sinks, and that's why we see mist like this. So depending on what's in the air, it will affect how we see light. Now, fog and mist actually differ. Fog is thick. We get lots of fog in Scotland, and they say that that's when you can see less than a thousand meters away. Whereas mist, you can actually see further than 1,000 meters. So mist is lighter. It's not as thick. So what BK's shown you right now is mist in the lower areas of our game reserve. So the sun isn't actually shimmering. But I like that, Marlo. I'm going to say that from now on. The sun is shimmering. So if we look at it now, it's actually very harsh. It's difficult for me to look at, and I imagine it'll be difficult for BK too, because it's now fully risen in the sky. And the light is very harsh now. It's casting that orange glow across Djuma Game Reserve. Tabitha, you're 11 years old and you are asking about the mist. So we tend to see mist in the morning, but once the landscape warms up from the sun, mist is basically just water droplets. I think that's a better way to describe it. Water droplets that's sort of suspended in the air. So it's a little bit moist. And because the sun is now up, it's warmer. I already feel warmer. What about you, BK? Yes, it's not that warm, but the sun is now changing the temperature. And this is why these particles are now starting to dissipate. They're starting to disappear. And that's why we can see it. So as the sun gets higher and everything becomes warmer, the mist will eventually disappear. So changes in temperature and changes in humidity form mist. It's very, very common to see mist in the low areas in the morning. Oh, this is just too beautiful. I'm very, very glad I got to share it with you all this morning.
Naturally, as you came across here, this impala decided to hide behind this bush. He was standing atop the termite mound, proudly displaying himself, and then became slightly camera shy. As you can see there, he has moved onto his winter forage, which is the leaves of trees, as opposed to the leaves of grasses, which are now very brown and not quite as nutritious as they were at the height of summer. He's also just leaving a bit of marking there. He's probably might just be scratching his eye, but he's got glands beneath his eyes that will leave his scent on the bush. And for those of you who don't know, an impala, part of his success is the fact that he can eat grass and trees. Monocotyledon and dicotyledonous leaves, for those who are doing a bit more biology, and that's quite unusual. Most must pick one or the other, and this impala is now lost his sense of shame and camera shyness and is going to relieve himself in front of us. Thank you so much. What a lovely thing to see in the morning. Yes, I think let's just look at his head. I always find it quite interesting thinking about these animals, and I'm sure you must see springbok at Tswalu. And of course, they replace each other almost completely. They almost have no overlap in the distribution. I always find that quite fun when I see springbok. I know that I'm in an area that is very distinct from this. It's much drier, of course, than the low-veld. An impala must have water. It is dependent on water. Whereas a springbok, which eats much of the same kind of thing, is simply not. Well, that's a very good question there, Nathan, aged just 9 years old. Why should their horn shapes be different? Well, I don't know that there's a good answer for that, other than to say, Nathan, that sometimes it's functional. So in other words, whatever they use the horns for will dictate their shape. But most of the time, I think you'll find that it's got something to do with what we call sexual selection. So it just happens to be what the lady impalas find attractive. And over the course of evolutionary time, what's happened is that the horns have developed certain shapes. So you've got kudu, which have got curly horns. You've got impala, which have got slightly curly horns. You've got What else am I trying to think about here? You've got a duiker, which has got dead straight horns, a steenbok, same kind of thing. But then in the animals that have got male and female with horns, sometimes they're designed a bit more for defense than they are for fighting each other. So a good example of that would be the oryx or gemsbok, which you'll see at Tswalu in the Kalahari. They've got dead straight horns, and male and female have them, and they do use them to defend themselves against lions, whereas an impala's horns are totally useless for that. They're only used for fighting with each other. You might find that the common sort of twist in the horns that occurs with many antelope is there so that they can hook into each other and pull each other around. So when they have a big fight, their horns will get locked in between and they can pull and then separate like that, as opposed to just sort of stab each other. That's a really nice question. Really good observation, Nathan. We're going to continue on from here. That impala has decided he doesn't want to be around us, but there are a number of others. Hello, Muffin, aged just 6 years old. You want to know if this is in real life? Yep, it is, and it's happening right now. We're coming to you from 5 locations in southern Africa. I don't know where you are, Muffin, or what time of the day it is where you are, but morning has just broken here in the country of South Africa, and it is real life. And it is live. And the sun, oh, there's a nice picture of the sun. We'll just have a quick look at that. So I don't know where you are in the world. You might not be in South Africa, in which case the sun will be in a different position in the sky. And this environment will look very unfamiliar to you. That's a good name for the morning. Muffin. I feel hungry now, Muffin. And there we have the risen sun. Let us roll on down the hill, David, into the cold valley below. It's always nice to drive slowly like this, or without the engine on, because it's nice and quiet. So you can hear if there are alarm calls or interesting bird calls. Or if there's an elephant going. Nothing through there, is there? No. We're on the northern boundary of Djuma now. To our right-hand side we can't go, to our left we can. But further north of Buffelshoek and further north of the Prrivate Game Reserve is the place where I cut my teeth, and that is, of course, Ngala Private Game Reserve.
Welcome back to andBeyond Ngala. We are still driving parallel to the river. We've just gone a little bit further west. And so basically the sun is coming up straight behind us, and we're getting this beautiful morning light hitting the trees up ahead of us. And one tree that we could see from a few hundred meters away is this tree that we're going to show you right now. And it's what makes it so amazing is just the color that's happening at this time of year. And it honestly, we were saying it literally looks like it's on fire. And so it's just got completely red. It's a tree called a Tamboti tree. I'm sure there's a few people that know about it. And I think along this road, in the beginning of May, I stopped at a Tamboti tree and I pointed out a single leaf that had started changing to a red color. And now the whole tree is completely red. So we've only got a few more weeks of that color, and then eventually the whole tree is going to lose its leaves. It's so nice to just be able to sit still, have a quick little listen around to see what's going on. Maybe hear the distant calling of those lions that we're looking for, maybe some alarm calls, and also to warm up in the sun. it doesn't seem like there's too much that's happening around here. So I'm going to keep driving. We are going to cross a riverbed shortly. What do we have there? Okay. So Casey, you've asked why this tree's the only one that's got red leaves, and it might seem like that in this area, but actually we've got lots and lots of trees that are starting to change their color. One thing around this area is that we're very, very close to the river system, and I mean, although it's dry, there's lots of underlying water, which means that the trees hold nutrients and are healthier, I guess, for a little bit longer. And so it takes a little bit longer for them to turn that color from this bright, bright red from green to red. There are trees that will stay throughout the whole year that will stay green. And then there are some that will gradually change their colors. I think most of if we started to move away from the riverbed, you'd see, so I just have to make sure I don't kill myself and Owen driving down here. Now, if we start driving away from the riverbed, you'll start to notice a gradual increase on the amount of trees that start to lose their leaves. See, all of these ones are still looking pretty good. But Casey, it's just also to try and protect itself from the winter conditions. It's very, very cold here, and it's also got a lot less water than in the summer. And having leaves and flowers takes up a lot of energy. So a lot of these trees will just drop their leaves and drop their flowers and just basically try and keep as small as possible to try and use less water throughout the winter time, because there is less available. So we'll see. I'm sure, I mean, around the corner I'll show you one or two leaves that have got different colors. So we've got a question from the coolest name in the whole entire world. We've got a question from Eric, who's 10 years old, and he's asking which I prefer, tracking in the morning or tracking in the afternoon. And Eric, I would have to say tracking in the morning, especially at this time of day, because the light is really nice for tracking. So the sun is very low, and it casts shadows along the tracks, which makes it a bit easier for us to see them. It does sometimes make it a bit tricky. I mean, if we are following tracks of lions who could have been moving throughout the whole night, it could take us a lot longer to find them. But if you give it as best a shot as you can, often you will be able to find them. And it gives you time. So, if they've walked very far, you've got the whole day to try and find them. Where if you start tracking in the afternoon, you're very limited, because we don't track or walk around in the bush at night time. And so morning, absolutely, I think, is my favorite time to track. And when we're tracking, it's important to take it very, very slowly. So we've got a road that meets another road over here. And so we just have to drive past very carefully and look for any sign of movement from any of the nocturnal animals that have been using these roads as almost like their pathways. See here. Doesn't look like too much here. Maybe some elephants that walk past here sometime throughout the night. So one thing that I've noticed this morning is, because it's so cold, the birds are taking a lot longer to wake up. And I mean, most of the time they'll be singing by now, but it seems like they're waiting, and we'll probably see them starting to get more active as they start to warm. I'm just going to quickly get up to the top over here, where I can stop and maybe switch off to listen for some of those calls. And whilst we do this and we spend some time listening, we'll send you across to Lauren, who's at a waterhole.
We have just arrived to Treehouse Dam. We have also been tracking, but there's no tracks. We haven't came across any tracks yet to actually follow, which means there's been no movement in that area. But this is Treehouse Dam, and it's always good to come to the water points because we are reaching winter. And what that means is that the water, or the available water around, is going to get less and less for the animals. It's all going to dry up, which means there's only going to be certain water points that they can actually access water to come and drink. So it's always good to come and check. And plus, it's beautiful. Can you see all the mist rising off the water body? Now, there's still a lot of water in Treehouse Dam, I must say. And that's because we received such heavy rains this year. The heaviest rainfall we've had in a very long time, which means all the dams are still full. So that may mean that it's not going to be such a harsh winter. Is that some terrapins, BK? Just straight ahead there. They're popping their little heads out of the water. Yep, just around here. It's little terrapins. Morgan, you're asking, does this pond freeze over and we can all go ice skating? Unfortunately not. It doesn't get cold enough here, or it hasn't, never to say never, but it doesn't get cold enough here for the water to freeze over. But what does happen is the body of water gets less and less and less, and it will reduce in volume. And normally, last year, there was not a single drop of water in this dam. Treehouse Dam, not a single drop. It completely dried out, which means you could walk right across it. Maybe not ice skate, but you could actually walk right across this dam. It's not very deep, so I'm really not sure what's going to happen this year because the dam's been the fullest it's been in so long. Will it empty? Will all the water disappear, or will some water remain? I really don't know. And I'm intrigued to find out. I think it's going to be very interesting because it will affect the movement of animals. If the water's still here, then the animals will still come here to drink. But if there's no water, then they have to find another water hole. Can you hear that? Ding, 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 ding. It's the blacksmith lapwings, BK. Becoming very active. Dink, 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 dink. That's where they get the name blacksmith from. Lapwings are always found around water bodies, and they make me laugh. Oh, it's looking at itself in a reflection. Yes, you look very good today. You look fabulous. And they make me laugh because they get very upset. They're slightly dramatic. If you get too close or you jump out and start walking around the dam, they will not be happy, and they will let you know that they're not happy. They're very protective over their little water bodies. But I love the colours, the monochromes. The white, the black, and the grey. And they eat aquatic and terrestrial invertebrates. So insects, any mollusks, any little crabs, they'll be looking for inside this dam. Kate, you're asking, does this bird's legs get cold? That is a good question. I would imagine yes, I think they would. Birds are also warm-blooded, just like us. Now, their bodies, of course, are covered in feathers, which will insulate them and help them keep warm. But I think the little legs will get cold. Luckily, they're protected by very, very thick scales. So they're not thin. It's not thin skin like ours. And these scales are able to help keep these legs a little bit warmer. But Kate, I think they would get cold. Animals do feel the cold, and they have all sorts of mechanisms to keep warm. Eating is one of them. If you're warm-blooded, like mammals and birds, eating, like this little lapwing here is doing, finding its breakfast, helps to keep you warm, because your metabolism is maintaining the body heat inside, just like us. Do you not find that you eat a lot more in winter? Or maybe that's just the excuse I use for eating a lot. I am eating a lot right now, and I'm blaming it on winter. I need my winter body. But in all seriousness, our metabolism, when we eat, it fuels our body. It gives our body fuel, and this generates heat, and it helps keep us warm. So that's the same for all warm-blooded animals. Okay, so we're going to let our lapwing enjoy breakfast, and I believe there's some other birds that are actually in the water.
We are sitting now with the little grebes here at a waterhole called the Fulsook Waterhole. And this particular family of little grebes has been very successful. That's them talking. There are now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little grebes in this waterhole. And when we started seeing little grebes here, there were just 2, and they produced 2 offspring, who we named, I think, Harold, and I can't remember the other name. I think it was Ishmael or Ibrahim, I can't remember. But one of our viewers, I think in Britain, named the other one, a youngster. Anyway, both of those 2 are still alive and well, which is pretty good because they have a very low chance of survival. Do the poor old little grebes. They appear to be just about the only life in here at the moment. Hello, Sophia and Sam. The hippos are not... There's a question. You've obviously seen hippos in this waterhole before, and now they're not here anymore. They just move from waterhole to waterhole, Sophia and Sam. So there are other big waterholes around where the hippos will go. Sometimes they go down to the Sand River, which is about 7 or 8 kilometers as the crow flies from where we're sitting now. And they just move. I don't know why they move always. Sometimes it's to find other hippos. They like to be in groups. They're a social species. Nice picture of the mist coming off the water there. And that is a Birchall starling now that David has found. Very peaceful sounds and scenes here. That twittering sound is the sound of the little grebes. There's some impala alarm calling, not too far from here, so I think we're going to move along and just see if we can't find out what they're shouting at. It might be a predator. Now, we're in the vicinity of sort of Tundi's area, Tlalamba's area, 2 leopardesses of this area, mother and daughter, and in fact the area where I saw Tundi with her when she had 2 cubs. And so we're going to drive quite quickly and see if we can't get lucky. Pull my blanket up so that I don't step on it. We've probably got about 5 or so minutes to get to where they're calling because there's no direct actual route. Now, impala will start alarm calling if they see a predator, for those of you who are new viewers, and they make a loud barking shout. Sorry, I didn't get that, Rebecca. Rebecca is directing the show today. We've got just a few more minutes for the kids show, so you can send through your last few questions to kidsquestions@wildearth.tv. If you'd like to ask us anything, we'd love to answer your questions, and then we shall open it to the floor, i.e. to the rest of our audience. Now, it's never a good idea to drive to the bush because, well, you don't want to run anything over, to lose your cameraman off back, and you also don't want to miss anything that might be lurking in the bushes. But at the same time, you need to drive quite quickly if something's alarm calling, because, well, you need to get there before whatever they're alarm calling at has disappeared. Let's now go across to Maputaland and beyond Phinda, where Clive has got a late sunrise, apparently.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a misty and cold andBeyond Phinda Private Game Reserve. As you can see, the sun is just coming through the mist here. It's a really beautiful morning. And we have been following two male cheetah for the last hour, hey Marcel? Yeah. Probably about an hour. We've been going through some very thick areas and some areas with not great signal, which is why we haven't been able to show you just yet, but they should be coming somewhere around to this area here, which is why we've stopped here. Thought we'd watch this beautiful sunrise coming through the mist, and I keep scanning with my binoculars into this beautiful open area to try and find them again. But I hope you guys have had an amazing morning so far. Now, these cheetah were quite full. They had very, very full bellies, which means they have probably eaten something. Maybe they caught something at some stage yesterday. Firstly, these are different cheetah. If you were watching yesterday afternoon, these are different cheetah to the cheetah we had found yesterday afternoon. That was a mother with two cubs. These are two big old male cheetah, very dominant in this area. But yes, they must have caught something and eaten yesterday, because they both had very full bellies and they were walking and their bellies were swaying as they were walking. So the kids' questions section is over, and we invite everyone to now send through their questions. It'll be great to hear from you. And while we sit here and scan these beautiful open areas and listen out for any alarm calls, we're going to send you across to Tswalu.
Good morning from an amazing day at Tswalu Kalahari. It is a glorious morning out here. The sun's going to be out probably in another 20 minutes or so we've got some time. Those of you who haven't met, my name's Dylan, and Gendre, our master cameraman. It's brilliant having you with us. Enjoy the time with us, and we're going to show you some amazing things today. Thank you. One of the really cool things that we got here, and I don't know if any of you may recall, we were talking about porcupines, and sometimes they eat the eland's bean plant. Now remember, the eland's bean plant is that lovely wispy little one, this one here, that almost looks fern-like, and it's got that huge rootstock that goes underground. It's kind of like an underground tree. And where we parked the Land Rover this morning, we're actually heading down to the meerkats, and where we parked the Land Rover, look what we got. This was like a gift to us this morning. This is just a fantastic example of porcupine that has actually been, and there's the droppings, there you go, of a porcupine that's actually been chewing on these roots. So I'm going to bring it closer to you there. And this is still wet. Jeez, look at that. Look at this. This is still sopping wet. It almost looks like meat, eh? Wow. And it smells nice, eh? Jean-Dre, being vegan, he might take this home with him and eat it later as well. But you see this lovely pink color? And that's, so they actually use this bark with some of the root for dyeing leather. It's a use that's been it's been used like that for many years in these areas. But that's just really nice to see. What I would guess this may mean though is that because it's not a super palatable plant, and remember I did mention that porcupines go for it sometimes, but the fact that we're starting to see this now more frequently may be an indication that there could be some kind of food stress now. You know, we're going deep into winter, so there's no fruits around, there's no summer melons, there's no gemspak cucumbers, so they're probably just starting to look at other resource options. And you can see it didn't, I mean, it ate it quite a bit, but it didn't go too deep. River has just asked if we can make tea from any of the plants here, and 100% yes. We don't have any right over here that you can, like that I'm looking at here, but over the coming days I'll actually look, and even if we see some during this drive, I will show some to you. Just interestingly on the tea thing is just bear in mind, one of the things with tea, and also like you get what they call these coffee substitutes, a lot of these things, tea is, the color from tea is just from the tannins in it. So you could technically make tea, not technically, you can make tea from this. It's going to give you a beautiful color. It'll be a lovely rose pink colored tea. It's going to taste awful, you know, but you'd be able to drink it. The stuff is not, you know, it'll be terrible. But I always kind of jokingly say, if you put enough sugar and milk with anything, it's going to taste good. So, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend making tea with this. These ones are actually slightly toxic, and that's coming back to porcupines. And we were chatting about them being, in some areas, being keystone species on the way that they partly ringbark trees. So it takes off that protective fire covering of the thick corky bark. Fires come through that burns into the tree, and the tree can die. So in some areas, porcupines are regarded as keystone species. But one of the trees, and I'm sure the other guides can show them to you, it's called Ntamboti. It is the most fantastically fragrant wood. There is almost nothing to compare it with. It is just a stunning patterned wood. Beautiful smell. If you put it on a fire, that scent, and even just raw cut wood is amazing. But it's very toxic. Okay, porcupines are one of the few animals that'll actively eat it. You've got these other little caterpillars that go for the seeds, are really cool things. But porcupines will eat that. So you do get some animals with a higher tolerance for toxicity in certain plants than others. So if you take a thing like this, very few things eat this. Even mole rats, they'll kind of like nibble it a little bit, but they don't go for a lot. But then Genre and I get you this morning, hey, and the porcupines had like a proper meal out of this. So coming back to the question about tea, you could make tea out of this, but this is not one that I would recommend. But yeah, we'll keep our eyes open, and if I see one of them, I'll give you a shout. Interestingly, if you look at the droppings here, you see the droppings are almost that, they've got that very reddish tinge to them, and that is a direct result of ingesting the tannins, the coloring in the roots that they're eating. And where our colleagues are working down on the other reserves, where they have elephants, you'll see elephant droppings also have that lovely reddish orange color, especially as they start drying out, and that's also as a result of the tannins in it. Same things that give tea its color. I love that name, Consulting Detective. Consulting Detective has asked, can this plant recover after having its roots damaged like this? Absolutely, absolutely. If you look at the above ground pots, this is, okay, so this is a completely different species. This is Hermania. This is a totally different thing. So the porcupine wasn't eating this. Here's the above ground pots. Okay. In fact, here we go. This is the exact above ground pot from this one that was eaten over here. So that's nice evidence that I didn't get the species wrong. Whew, lucky me. So this would have been growing over. So going into winter with all the frost, all this is going to die off completely. You're just going to have a couple of dead twigs left, and that's all that's going to be sticking out the ground. That's it. So this plant is doing nothing in the winter except just storing the nutrients that it's acquired in water and just biting the bullet. This rootstock is massive. It can go down, well over a meter in depth, and it's thick. What the porcupine has eaten here, this is nothing for this plant. It's designed, it's evolved, or whatever we want to call it, to survive predation by porcupines. So anyway, Genre and I, thanks for that. This was a real gift that these porcupines left for us this morning. Genre and I, we're just going to get our kit ready and we're going to head down to the meerkats.
Another juvenile batelier, Terathopius equadatus, one of my favorite Latin names. Some Latin names just stick in your head. And of course, most Latin names, I think all, have a meaning that describe the animal that you are seeing. And this one literally means marvelous face, no tail, which is exactly what an adult batelier looks like. Juveniles look completely different, and sometimes they throw you. It isn't until you look closely that you're able to see that it is a juvenile batelier after all. But you can just see the panels on the wings. There's three separate layers of feathers. And that's the sort of easiest way. You can see straight away that it's a juvenile, really, because it's fluffy. It's got bed head. But then, once you look at the wing, that's when you think, aha, it's a juvenile batelier after all. This very young one. I saw one yesterday as well that wasn't so young. But it does take approximately 8 years for the young bird to attain its full adult plumage. 8 years. Now, that's a very, very long time. And even in flight, believe it or not, a batelier for me is the easiest bird to identify in flight because of the short tail and the very unique wingtips and the way that they fly. They have a very wobbly sort of flight mode. It doesn't look too stable up there, a lot of turbulence. But for the young, when they're in flight, they're actually not so easy to identify because they do have long tail feathers. As they get older, the tail feathers shorten. And the reason for this is because they're young, they're still learning. To have a short tail sort of makes it very, very... It's a unique way of flying in terms of aerodynamics, to have that short tail and long wings. And that's why they wobble in flight. So for the young, to be born with a short tail would make it quite tricky. And that's why they do have long tail. There's like it's almost like having stabilizers on your bike. Do you remember those days? I still have stabilizers on my bike. But yeah, so that's why the tail is long, to help stabilize the bird in flight, and slowly, slowly they'll shorten, and then the batelier can learn how to fly with a very short tail. And when I say short tail, I mean ridiculously short tail. It's very, very unique. Luna, you're asking about the coloration of the plumage, and most likely it's as camouflage. So bateliers are really sort of easy to pick out They've got a bright red face with yellow. They've got unique markings. They're quite easy to identify from a distance. But for the young, because he's brown and quite nondescript at this age, it's probably the juvenile plumage is just to blend into the background. They'll spend a lot more time in trees than the adult would. The adult battle ears are actually said to spend anywhere between 8 to 9 hours in flight looking for food. Now that's a working day for most of us. 8 hours, or at least in the UK, is a full working day. So that's a long time to be in the air looking for flight, particularly at low altitude, which is what battle ears do. So for the young, they spend a lot more time just perched and roosting in trees rather than in flight. So it's probably to blend in, to keep them safe. They would make the ideal snack, believe it or not, for much bigger birds of prey. And then only as they get older, they develop adult plumage, which is the case for most birds, or at least birds of prey, even owls. They'll have a different plumage when they're young to when they're older. Didn't get that name. Rebecca will repeat it for me though, don't worry. You're asking, what does the word plumage mean? Plumage is just a term that we use for all the bird's feather. Pat. There you go, Pat. So instead of saying all the feathers, we use the word plumage. It's almost like talking about the hair of a mammal. And birds do have different feathers. They're not all the same. They have different feathers that are structured slightly differently to sort of allow the bird to do different things. They have flight feathers, which are really rigid and very, very structured to assist them in flight. They also have very, very soft down feathers. And this is normally the feathers that help insulate the birds against a cold. There's all sorts of different types of feathers. So plumage means all the feathers collectively. Okay, we're going to head into Chitwa and see what's going on around the Chitwa Dam. And I believe you guys are going to cross to another bird in a tree.
We have come down to the riverbed to see if we can find anything lying and making use of this beautiful morning sun. And we've just found this troop of baboons that you can see in the trees. And most of them have moved out into an open patch where they're sunning themselves. And a few of them are taking this time to get something to eat. So you can see that one is literally going from branch to branch. It's plucking away and it's putting it straight into its mouth. And so there's these small little berries on this tree. It's called a jackalberry tree, one of the common trees that we see around the river. And it seems like the whole family's, although the troop at least, is quite happy here. There are one or two times where maybe a youngster gets too close to another adult and we hear a couple of noises. And what I'm really hoping for is they slowly but surely start making their way down towards the bottom and we can see them moving across the river. It's always a lot of fun to watch a whole troop of baboons. So this one you can see it's turning and it's facing directly into the sun. So just warming the belly and in between the legs where there's very little hair. It's trying to catch as much warmth as they possibly can. And then more down to the left, it seems like these ones are getting a little bit more active. And we've actually seen some playful youngsters that have been jumping from tree to tree. So literally jumping about 1.5 meters down onto another small little tree. It would be cool to show you one or two of those active youngsters. Sarah, you asking at what age do these baboons start finding mates? And it's, I think it's around 2 or 3 years old for the females, if I'm not mistaken. The males take a little bit longer because they have to compete for the mates. So within this troop, there'll be several different dominant males who form alliances. And they'll look after one another. And basically, they just have to get into the point where they can start competing against one another to find mates. And that will usually happen a little bit later than the females. I haven't actually seen one thing that I absolutely love watching is a troop of naughty baboons playing around, these young children. And they are very, very active and they're quite cheeky sometimes. I haven't seen any small babies yet. It's just mostly the adults here. I'm sure the youngsters are causing havoc somewhere else in the troop. This is a troop that we see quite regularly around the riverbed, and they tend to stick around here a lot. And from here they move up almost north and do a big loop, and then they always come back down into the river to roost, because the trees are just so nice. Really big, beautiful, tall trees where they're nice and safe from any predators. So, I mean, they're not too worried about too many predators, but they'll definitely be concerned of things like lions and leopards, maybe. And Gertie, you're wondering what a baboon's biggest threat is, and definitely the two predators that I just mentioned. One thing that they also actually have to keep a lookout for, I've just come to think of it, is these big birds of prey. In particular, a bird called a crowned eagle that we don't really find around here too much. But in some areas, these crowned eagles will literally hunt baboons and monkeys, especially when they're on the top of the trees like this, and they'll try and sneak up behind them and catch them from behind. And those crowned eagles are incredible. I mean, they might only weigh a few kilograms. A big baboon will outweigh them probably by double the amount. And that crowned eagle is still capable of catching and killing a baboon like that. But usually, I mean, within the troop, there's one that's hanging around, literally hanging from one leg. Don't know if you saw that. Yeah, so this troop will have different sentries, and it will mostly be those dominant males that I was talking about who will be responsible for looking after the troop. And if they see something that they're concerned about, and it will be things like snakes, predators, lions, leopards, and then the aerial predators, martial eagle in this area, maybe one or two of the smaller eagles they'll be concerned about. And as soon as they see a threat, they'll alarm call, and these baboons will understand from their behavior and maybe even the alarm calls as to what they are needing to be worried about. And if it's something on the ground, you might find the whole troop moving up to the top of the trees, or if it's from the sky, they might slowly move down to the bottom of the tree. We'll stick around here for a little bit longer, and just to see if we can see some of those naughty little baboons playing around.
Here are a herd of elephants. Here are a herd of elephants. Here is a herd of elephants going off towards the west. They're going into Djuma. I have some interesting news. We found the impala that we're alarm calling. They were looking into the bushes. We thought we were in luck. We heard another vehicle in the reserve next door, and we called them in. And Lex Hess said that he had managed to find Tundi, and who he referred to as Wolfgang. That is the name that he has given temporarily to, to Tundi's cub. So he's got Tundi and her cub on Torchwood, which is the reserve east of us. So unfortunately, we can't go there. But we were close. We were close. I'm just going to sneak a little bit further down the road here to get a better view of our elephants. Hello, James. The animals that seem to lose the most condition during winter are supposed to, in theory, be the warthogs. The warthogs, this little bull's showing us how big and strong he is. The warthogs are supposed to be the most drought prone. In my experience, however, in a dry year, it's the buffalo that struggle the most. Not so much with the food, but with the lack of water. So it depends if you've had a good wet summer or if you've had a dry summer. Now, we had a pretty good wet summer. I'm just going to sneak a little bit forward again. There's another one on this. And so, yeah, I think the buffalo will be all right. Everything will be okay. But, you know, when conditions really get rough, it's certainly in the last drought was the buffalo that suffered the most. Warthogs as well to a certain extent. And you'll find that the animals that do best You have got some squaff teeth, my dear. I'm sorry about that. The animals that do best are, in really dry conditions, are the non-ruminants, the hindgut fermenters, the less efficient digesters, like elephants and like zebras, because they can just process more food. There's no limit to the amount of food that they can process. You may well find that during the winter months, I mean, if we were going to talk about all animals, I mean, a lot of animals by default don't even survive through the winter because the conditions are just not, it's not possible for them to. So lots of insects and arachnids which have a life cycle that sees the species survive as eggs during the winter. I suppose you could say that they struggle more than any of the mammals do. Now, why did this herd has decided to go into an impenetrable thicket? It's slightly irksome to me. They will come out at the other side of it. Just back here, there's one with his tusks glistening in the sun. Not a great view. Oh. No, don't go away. You're on screen. But in you know, this year, I don't think that there is a mammal that will struggle during the winter. There's lots of water. It's not going to dry out before the next rainy season. And there's plenty of forage because of the good rains. So I think it's fine. I'm afraid my communications with the final controller are now going beep, 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 beep. And my understanding is that we are going somewhere else, but I don't know where that is.
We've repositioned slightly just so we can see the whole troop facing in towards the sun, and we've got the beautiful light now behind and literally see a whole bunch of their faces. These two here look like they're in the teenage years, but they seem to be enjoying the sun a lot and they are worried about each other. So they're just sitting quite peacefully for now, but let's hope that they get a little bit more active. It's very interesting. This tree that these two baboons are sitting on now, the one on the left-hand side, the slightly smaller, more thicker one, is exactly the same tree I showed you in the very beginning of the morning. So that bright, bright, bright red tree. This is exactly the same species, but you know, probably because it's very close to the river where the nutrients are a little bit high at this time of year, you can only just start to see the red leaves starting to change now. And it's fascinating. I mean, as the crow flies, it's less than 200 or 300 meters away from one another. Battalier is asking a question as to what baboons eat when there's no more fruit around in the trees. And luckily, I mean, this jackalberry provides fruit in the winter time, where most other trees provide fruit in the summertime. So there is pretty much throughout the whole year some sort of fruit that they'll be able to eat on. But they have got a very, very wide diet. I mean, they feed on little things like tubers. They'll actually feed on the leaves of the trees. They'll dig up little bulbs and roots. And on some occasions, they might even eat meat. I know these big male baboons have been recorded catching and killing small antelope, like a small nyap, or maybe even a small impala, especially in the first ones of the season around November, December time. And so they've got a very, very, very diet. And if one food source runs out, then they'll quite happily forage for a slightly different food. One thing, I mean, if you watch this one feeding now, the one on the left-hand side, it's quite delicate. And I mean, that's what those thumbs and those fingers are really good for. But sometimes you'll see little pieces dropping. And it might just discard a seed or the husk of the fruit. And if that's the case, We sometimes find antelope species foraging below the baboons for that exact same reason. And a little bit earlier on, I did see a small little common duiker, but it did move away from us. You see, this one's really enjoying the fruit of the jackalberry this morning. And look how high they are, so very, very safe from predators. I thought that one was actually taking a nap, but it's really enjoying the sun. The brain asking how many baboons we find in a troop. And again, I think it also varies on the resources. If there's lots and lots of resources available, you'll tend to find bigger troops. If there's less, there's more competition, so you'll find smaller troops. Within this area, I mean, we see at least 4 different baboons within Ngala itself. So this one in the central parts, one very close to tented camp, one slightly further along the river, and then another one right up at the top of the reserve at around Ngala Safari Lodge. And if I were to estimate the size of them, on average it's probably between 50 and 60 baboons within the troops around here. Some of them, I mean, I've seen a massive troop of probably over 100, and then in smaller parts of the country I've seen troops that are maybe between 10 and 20. Butterfly is asking what a baby baboon is called, and I don't think it's got a name. I don't think there's a specific name like a cub or anything like that. Not sure. I'll see. I don't think I've heard of a name for a baby baboon before. So we are going to go from one baby to another, and these babies are in the trees, and we're going to send you one to a baby in the waterhole itself.
We have a baby hippo. It's so young. Oh, is that Mama with those red-billed oxpeckers on you? Show us your baby again, please. It's tiny. I think there's actually 2 very, very small hippos around, and the young can't hold their breaths for as long as the adults can. So I hope, are you 2 creating a cuddle puddle? Not quite Kahuma style, but they're resting on one another. Oh, let us see your Bambino again. We're at Tswalu. We're just going to wait this out. Watching these snoozy hippos is going to make me fall asleep. But the youngsters definitely don't stay underwater as long, so any moment it should pop his head up. See those big nostrils? Oh, there we go. I hope you all saw that. I think it's positioning itself in between these 2. I think the one at the back is fully snoozing. Oh, come on. Patience always pays off out here. You see how the adult there is barely moving, keeping the eyes and ears above the water to listen and see, of course, and then ever so slowly bringing the nostrils up to take a big gulp of air, and then putting his head back under again. Or her head, sorry. Why has this youngster been such a good free diver at such a young age? They do suckle underwater. and therefore they're very, very used to holding their breath. And you can train your lungs. There's very unique ways of breathing in order to hold your breath when you're going underwater without a scuba tank. So the youngsters already know how to do this at a very, very young age, but their lungs are just not fully developed enough or large enough to have them underwater for a really, really long time. Now, when humans are learning to free dive, if you take a look at yourself right now, most of you, I imagine, are probably breathing very, very shallow, and the chest is just moving up and down very, very slowly. But when you learn to free dive, to hold your breath underwater, you learn how to use your diaphragm again, just like you did as a baby. Go back to how you were born.
Hello everyone and welcome back. This mist is still persisting here. I would have thought the sun would have burned through it by now, but the mist is winning for now. But it's actually creating such a beautiful scene here of these zebra and wildebeest all in the mist in front of us. It's really, really nice. So you'll actually often see zebra and wildebeest together like this, just because the more eyes looking out for any predators around here, the better. And as some of you might know that were watching just now, we were following two cheetah through or coming straight towards this area, which we have lost and haven't really seen for the last 45 minutes or so. But we're going to carry on looking for them after this, but we thought we'd stop and just take all this beauty around us. This is quite an interesting little group of zebra here. They all, I was having a look a few minutes ago, and they all seem to be males. So it's what we call a bachelor herd. And as soon as they turn around, I can show you why. But then the wildebeest just on the left, in that little herd, there's going to be one big dominant male, which I think is the one at the back left, if I'm not mistaken. And then lots of different females and the youngsters. Some of the youngsters are right in the middle of the group, and you'll see their horns are still straight. JC, I like your comment of the zebras being prison ponies, but I've just noticed, have a look at this one walking away from us now. Can you see he's only got a tiny, tiny, short little tail compared to the rest of them who have got that long, flowing tail. Now, I was just saying how this is a bachelor herd, so this is all males, and I don't know if you've ever seen how zebras fight, but it's a relatively aggressive affair. And they jump up onto their back legs and they bite each other and they kick. And what would have happened here, more than likely, is two males fighting for dominance and to show the females which is the strongest one. And they often try and bite each other's rumps. And I think what's happened there is that he's actually accidentally had his whole tail bitten off. Shame, it's amazing to see, though. There's also there's a bird. If you look at that young wildebeest, there's a bird just above that wildebeest, which is a very interesting little bird called a fork-tailed drongo, which I'm sure you've seen on some of the other live safaris, but they're often following these animals that are walking through grasslands around. Because as they're walking, they're obviously flicking up little insects and grasshoppers and things out of the grass, and they're just taking advantage of staying close to all these herds of animals. Really clever. Here's another one even. Oh, really clever little birds. Well, myself and Marcel are going to carry on our search for those 2 cheetah, and we're going to let you continue with your live safari.
Hey, so here we are back with the meerkats at Tswalu Kalahari. These are the rock stars for those of you who haven't yet seen them. And they are named after a particular little road crossing where there's this totally random isolated rock standing there. That's the area that they kind of stemmed from. But there's a very good reason why Jandre and I are sitting and watching these meerkats, and we're going to be doing it every morning pretty much, and obviously we'll be seeing other things as well, but we will really want to keep very, very close eye on this group of meerkats over the coming, let's say, week and a half, even 2 weeks, in the mornings in particular. And the reason for that is the alpha female has actually had pups. Now it's about 5 days ago, give or take, and typically they'll keep the pups underground for about 2 weeks, and then they'll start bringing them above ground. But we've actually got a different group of meerkats that we were following, the horses, and their pups were taken by a honey badger. We don't know where they were taken, but they were taken. No, they were eaten by a honey badger. And but that group was really interesting because people had actually seen her on previous litters bringing them out as early as 5 days after being born, which is crazily early for these. So I'm not expecting that with these, but Jandra and I, we really don't want to miss an opportunity of us seeing with you, obviously. I mean, that's for us is first prize. We can, if we see these, it'll be great, but having you join us and seeing them is just first prize for us. We don't want to miss that opportunity when these little pups come out for the first time, because they are ridiculously adorable. So you must just bear with us. I mean, hey, we could be sitting in a worse place than sitting watching meerkats out here. So it's a little bit windier this morning and a little bit cooler than yesterday. It's not cold, says he, wearing like 3 layers of jackets and all sorts of things. But yeah, it's not particularly cold this morning, although I look like the Michelin man. I can actually hear them calling now. So it's a very, very soft call. I don't think my mic will pick it up. But they're making these very faint, like little calls like that. I'm very, very excited about the possibility of seeing meerkat pups again. I think we're going to be Jandra and I are going to be under a lot of pressure when these pups do start emerging. People are going to be like begging us to come back to the meerkats because they are super cool. And again, classic morning ritual for meerkats, standing up, getting some sun, looking out for any possible predators. Remember yesterday there was a black-chested snake eagle, We couldn't see it on camera. It was miles away. And so far, in fact, that and quite low down in a valley, so we don't think the meerkats even picked up on it. If they had, they would normally have kept watching it or given 1 or 2 sort of minor alarm calls there. But the fun thing with sitting with these little guys, apart from them being cute and seeing pups, or the opportunity of seeing pups and things like that, is they're small animals, and small animals are just very prone to being eaten by a whole range of other things. So you never know what might pop out. Even the fact that we're sitting here doesn't necessarily deter predators. Remember, if the meerkats are relaxed with us, there's a whole lot of other things that are also very relaxed with us. So we could be sitting here and you can get something popping out of a bush just like that. Loitz has just asked, do meerkats have different milk in each nipple like lions do? I must say I wasn't even aware of that, and I don't think there would be any difference, because remember, unless it's like lime flavored, strawberry flavored, vanilla flavored, something like that, I don't know, because if she has, I'm just kidding there by the way, if she's got, like, let's say she's got 4 pups, Yeah, they will all be suckling on different nipples at a different time. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be getting, if the nipples all had different kinds of milk, it would be, those pups wouldn't necessarily be getting all the nutrients that they would need. So yeah, I would have to check it up, and I stand completely to correction on that. Pretty much take everything I say with a pinch of salt, and I'm always willing to be corrected on anything. And I'll look stuff up as well. And but yeah, that's an interesting question. That. So this is the alpha female closest to us, and there are six large meerkats in this group. I think it's 4 adults and 2 sub-adults. And typically what they'll do is they'll leave the sub-adults behind on babysitting duty when the group goes out. And I don't know what the evolutionary reason for that would be, but now again, this is me kind of thinking off the top of my head is, if you've got a group of adults, they are the most experienced ones with foraging, understanding the area where all the bolt holes are, so there'll be an optimum functioning unit there with the adults. So if they all go foraging, and by leaving the babysitter behind as a sub-adult, that's probably the most expendable one in the group, as well as the pups. In other words, if something happens to a sub-adult and pups left at a burrow, like happened to the horses, at least the rest of the colony is a fully functioning group, a breeding group. So maybe that's the reason why they leave a sub-adult behind. That's just me guessing there. But we're going to spend the rest of the morning here, so yeah, it'll be very exciting to see what happens in the next couple of hours.
He just popped his head up. These water horses are not doing much. Hippopotamus is Greek, or comes is derived from the Greek language meaning water horse. Hippopotamus, amphibious. And of course, amphibious means 2 lives, 2 phases, water and land. They rely so heavily on the water. They're said to be the only truly amphibious ungulate. The one in the back is fully snoozing. I imagine having wonderful dreams about all the delicious vegetation that they can eat. Now, normally female hippos, oh, there is peeking, is there a baby? Hello. Blue Kelpie, you're asking about the babies. Are they born after 8 months on land or in the water? Normally, it's in the water. So they're born right into the realm that they depend so heavily on, and that is, of course, water. And they start suckling on the water too. It's just far easier for a mammal of that size. Hippos are so large, and they're not very graceful. They've got short legs, huge bulky bodies, and a female normally weighs about 1,400 kilograms, which would most likely be about 3,000 pounds, thereabouts. Huge bulky bodies. And therefore it's much easier to give birth in the water. It's a much smoother process for mum and offspring. They normally only give birth to 1 at a time. And when the young is around 2 months old, that's when they start to learn how to hold their breaths. Mirth, you're asking how does the birth work if the hippos can't swim? You're right, hippos can't swim. They're actually buoyed up here in the water. Normally they've got their little legs touching the bottom of water bodies, and their bulky sort of bodies themselves keep them buoyed up. And it's an energy saving technique. So when the female does give birth, in the water, she will normally edge the baby up straight away. So using her nose normally, or her large skull, she normally pumps the baby up to start breathing air. Similar to dolphins, and immediately the offspring has gone from being in a sac, an amniotic sac in the womb, to being in liquid. So it's actually not traumatic for the young itself, and it's just a lot easier. Once the baby starts breathing, the mother will then slowly teach the offspring how to suckle underwater. And they're able to close their ears, they're able to fold their ears over and close their nostrils to avoid drowning. Now, of course, they'll do this instinctively, but they're normally born in shallow water. So the mother wouldn't give birth in the sort of deep part of the dam. She'll normally go to a very secluded part of the dam that's sheltered and safe, and it normally will be shallow. So she can stand, and then she can assist the young as soon as it's born. And calves actually lose heat much quicker than adults. And therefore, that's another reason that the mum will push the calf out of the water and normally pop it onto her back so she can start to warm. He or she can start to warm up immediately as a youngster. It's so lovely to see small hippos. I was talking about free diving earlier and the different ways that you can train your lungs to breathe. You can also control your buoyancy. So hippos will actually make themselves negatively buoyant before submerging themselves. And how you do that? Humans do it the same. You just breathe out all the air you have in your lungs, and this immediately will make you negatively buoyant, which means you will sink. So that's another reason hippos will breathe out, then submerge, and they'll sink to the bottom of the water.
That's a little sub-adult that's popped out the burrow there. It's just looking down now. So I'm going to take a wild guess and say that's probably going to be that one or one of the others, or the other sub-adult that's going to stay behind when they go foraging. And it seems to be that the food availability is still pretty good in this area at the moment. And also the hours that they're able to spend, daylight hours, are kind of limited now. So, and that's where the pressure comes in. You know, if you've got limited daylight hours, super cold temperatures, going into winter, your food resources are steadily diminishing, not just because meerkats are eating, and other things are eating them, but also things like scorpions are just going further and further and further, you know, deeper down into their burrows. It just becomes progressively more difficult to keep catching enough food to sustain the group. And now, with this female having dropped these pups, in winter it's going to be absolutely critical that she maintains this good foraging. Oh, that's cute. You see how she fell forward there. Anna Marie has asked how long will they suckle the pups for? It's about 3 weeks. So they'll be above ground 2 weeks. And then, even then, they're going to be starting to follow the adults around and begging. They do this incredible begging, and the parents are hugely tolerant of it. Not just the dominant female, but any of the other meerkats in the group. So they'll walk. So if someone catches something even close to the burrow, this is now aside from the suckling. If someone catches something close to the burrow, that little meerkat will walk straight up to them and start like begging. They'll actually go to the one over the food item with the mouth open, and 99% of the time the adult just drops that food item and lets the youngster take it. At about 6-7 weeks of age, that starts getting less and less and less, and becomes more and more aggression towards it. And from about 8 weeks onwards, even sometimes a little bit longer, the pups will be able at least to
Hi. Sorry about the technical issue there. We are out in the African bush and it happens every now and then. But we found something very interesting here called a community nest spider. Now this is quite a big web. You can see with all the mist we've had this morning how it's caught all these little raindrops, and it's really standing out beautifully against everything. It's quite easy to see. But inside here there's a whole lot of little holes going in all around here, and there's a whole community of spiders inside here. So it's not just one spider in a web like you normally see. These spiders all work together to catch the food. You know, if an insect flies and gets caught in the web, there's almost a rush of spiders that come out to catch it, and they all help with raising the young. And yeah, it's just quite an interesting little spider here. They're quite widespread, so you might have seen them in some of the other reserves as well. But really special to see. We're going to carry on looking for these cheetah though, and send you back to Lauren with that baby hippo. All right.
We are still with the cutie hippo. I haven't managed to bring myself to drive away yet. It's such a precious moment. And hippos do have quite a reputation for being one of the most dangerous animals that you can actually encounter out here on foot in Africa. And it's true, they can be really dangerous, but they're actually really incredible animal, as are all animals incredible in their own way. Being the third largest land mammal after elephants and white rhinos, I don't think they get enough credit sometimes. Hey, we see you. Okay, I think many of you are inquiring about buoyancy. Sorry, I didn't get enough time to wrap that up. So let's just take a human as an example. So when we go in water, we're going into a material that's completely different from air. And we can either float or sink. Now, if you float, you're said to be positively buoyant. And if you sink, you're said to be negatively buoyant. Okay? Okay, quickly over to James.
We've got Tundi here and the cub is close by. There she is. The cub was following her. We're hoping the cub is still following and hasn't been left behind. She may have been left, or he may have been left. Tundi's definitely hunting. She's seen something. We're just hoping the little cub's going to pop out of the bushes. But she may have left him behind. Oh, Lex Hess is just telling me that she's left the cub behind. Just inside Torchwood here, so she's obviously going hunting, and she's left the cub, a little male, in the bush behind. He's not far from us. Maybe he'll disobediently come and say hello. Oh, it's lovely to see her again. I think there were some impala here. I suspect that's what she's seen. Yeah, she's looking at impala. Yeah, she's definitely spotted something worth trying to eat. So, just for those of you who are wondering, she's left the cub underneath a tree, so not stashed in a den or anywhere like that. So MGN, he is old enough to be, well, she wouldn't stash him in a tree, but what she would do is not put him in a den and trust that he would climb if there was any danger. And that's exactly what she's done. She's left him actually on a ridge crest. Apparently he's waiting underneath a fallen stump, but he could definitely climb at this age. And this is where the patience of a cat just never ceases to amaze me. They put the patience of a human being to complete shame. Right, so there's some rutting impala. That's why she's picked her head up. She knows that a rutting impala is not an aware impala. And a rutting impala at this time of the year is also probably an imbecile, because he has not realized that it's pointless. All of the cows are female. All of the cows are female. All of the ewes are pregnant at this stage, so the rutting is a waste of time. Rhonda, I got a bit tongue-tied there because your question was coming through. The cub will never join her on a hunt. It's not like it is with lions. The cub will start killing for itself fairly soon, like if it's sitting there now. If a lizard or a small rodent makes itself known, he'll kill it. But he'll never join her to hunt. Okay, she's definitely after this impala now. Now, if you are a new viewer, a rutting impala is an impala crazed and filled with testosterone. All he's thinking about is mating. And all the mating's happened already, but there's a hangover after the rut and the mating has taken place. And he's totally oblivious to any other threats. And so this time of the year, male impala get killed far more frequently than other demographics of the impala population. There are two other people in the sighting, two other vehicles, in case you're wondering what the sounds are. It's in a classic hunting pose. There's a hyena now, just popping out, which she's seen. The hyena hasn't seen her. It will shortly, I imagine. Yep. Doesn't care though, you see. Here we go. Hyena's coming this way. Let's see how this plays out. What she doesn't want is to be disturbed by the hyena, because that hyena will be as tenacious as she is patient. It'll sit here and wait for her to do all the hard work. I can still see the leopard just, so I'm going to wait and see what the hyena does. And hopefully he'll just leave her alone and go away. But if he thinks she's hunting, he'll hang with her. There we go. I think we'll be lucky to see the leopard again. Okay, the hyena's moving away now. So at this stage, while that hyena is a danger to the cub will climb out the hyena's way. So the hyena could backtrack the leopard. Okay, let's go forward and we'll see if we can find the leopard. There's a termite mound there that I suspect she'll head towards for vantage. There she is, she's up again. She's just in here, Darv. There she is. I just don't want to block this other vehicle. I'm going to go past her. That's all right. Otherwise, we're going to block the other vehicle. Is that all right? Now, I think what's happened is the impala has seen the hyena walking down the road. There's a kind of half-hearted alarm call. That's why she's not looking so interested anymore. Marco, Tundi's belly is just flappy. She's got a flappy belly. I don't know if she always has had. She has since I've known her. And I think it's got to do with her age. She's had lots of cubs. It's not because she's hungry. She's got a flappy belly. She's obviously still lactating. Well, she'll be almost finished lactating, but she's probably still lactating, which will make it look even flappier. I don't think these impala have seen her. Fascinating stuff. All right, while we wait to see how this unfolds, let's go down to Chitwa Dam with Lauren.
Well done, James. The Queen is back on Djuma. I've been waiting to hear those words. Now, there's actually 2 calves here, 2 hippo calves. So we're just going to try and give you the best view of one. But we were talking earlier about buoyancy, and it comes from physics. I did not study physics at school. I was a chemistry girl, but it's basically the force on an object in fluid, so in water, let's say, and it comes from, I think it's derived from Spanish, the word buoyancy, and it's basically referring to the force on the object that makes it either move upwards or downwards, so i.e. float or sink. So it's all about pressure, the density of the object, and of course gravity. Gravity will have more of an effect on an object on the surface of the water than it will underneath. Water is far denser than air. Now BK, I'm just going to give a little bit of an explanation to what I was trying to say earlier, and you learn this when you're freediving. I got my freediving certificate a long time ago, but when you're in water, I float because I have a high fat content. Most likely BK would sink because he's got really, really high muscle content and less fat. So if you put both BK and I into the water, BK would probably sink straight away and I would float. And that makes life a lot easier for me than it for him. Women in general, now I'm saying generally, have a higher fat percentage and therefore tend to float more than men. So if you think of your lungs, okay, if I was to remain in water and fill my lungs up completely with air, I'm changing the composition of my body. So if I go, my lungs are now filled with air, that's going to make me float. So BK, who would normally do that exact technique. Fill his lungs up completely with water, and when he's sinking, he'll stop sinking all of a sudden because his buoyancy has changed, and he'll slowly start floating up in the water column again. Now, if BK gets to the surface and he decides to exhale all the air, the composition will change once again and he'll sink. Try it. It's not going to work in your bathtub, I'm afraid, but the next time you're in a swimming pool, lake or ocean, try it. Stay on the surface, fill your lungs up with air. There's 2 different ways to do that, and you'll float. And then let all that air out until there's absolutely nothing left in your lungs, and slowly you will start sinking, and that is buoyancy. And that's exactly what these hippos do here. When they want to submerge themselves to stop their big bodies floating, they're going to tail, let all the air out, some of the water body. So I think we are going to leave Chitwa, but it's been really, really wonderful seeing these little calves. And for now, you guys cross to Tswalu.
So I was just chuckling. Lauren was saying to everyone to go test their negative buoyancy in a swimming pool. We're going to be searching long and hard in our environment. Those. You can swim in sand. Sand. I only say that kind of half tongue in cheek there because we've got a lot of little things that actually you kind of can term it swimming in sand, from lizards, different kinds of legless skinks. We got drone spiders. These things are often covered in dense fur, not fur, solifuge with fur on. But those hairs actually help them dig into the sand, and very, very, very fast. So yeah, technically I guess that's a way of swimming through sand. But speaking of these sun spiders or red romans, actually it's a misnomer. They're not a spider, and hopefully we'll be able to find you one over the coming weeks. It'll be quite challenging now in winter. But they pretty much resemble a spider, but they've got no venom. They've just got these really big jaws that they use for subduing their prey. But these meerkats love eating them as well. So meerkats aren't averse to eating pretty much whatever they can find, whether it's scorpions, geckos. We've got like a really special little species of gecko out here, and hopefully we'll be able to see one. Although the times that we're operating in aren't really conducive to finding them. They're called barking geckos, tiny little geckos about the length of your middle finger as for an average person, and they burrow under the sand, and meerkats love eating them as well. But we'll keep our eyes open for things like that as well, and yeah, we're just going to spend some more time here and enjoy these meerkats.
Now, she's moved a little bit, and she's only about 80 meters from the impala, which are looking sort of in her direction. We're just going to sit right here and wait and see how this unfolds, because it's possible the impala will walk towards her here. And then she might just be able to jump upon one. They're very relaxed. They're not alarm calling at all. They're not saying anything. They're just waiting. And what we don't want to do is get too close to the leopard, simply because the impala will not approach her if we're close. I think we're at a good distance here. We're about 20 meters from her. The impala will be comfortable 20 meters from us. She'll just wait patiently and see what they do. Yeah, they've got no idea. Now, in an ideal world, what she would do is just lie there until one of them basically stepped on her, and then she'd jump on it. Because in this kind of light and in this kind of vegetation, for her to stalk closer through this grass would be very difficult. So I think her approach is going to be to wait and see if they don't come closer to the road. The road gives her great cover. She can walk totally silently. She can walk below the lip of the vegetation. See how slowly some of them are coming this way. Now the tricky thing for her is that she doesn't have a periscope, so in order for her to see exactly what's going on, she's got to take the risk at some stage of popping her head up above the vegetation. There, like she's doing now, there's some elephants fighting with each other. She's just popped her head up to have a look. Butterfly, the impala are not mating anymore. The mating is finished. As I was saying earlier, she will take advantage of the rut, yes, for sure. Look at that wonderful stalk she's doing. That is a quintessential leopard shot. Now she's seeking out the cover of the middle manaki as well. That's the center of the road. See how she keeps her ears flattened? Because although the impala are not the fancied species in this interaction, they are very wily. They are very good at seeing what's going on. See how she looks up very reticently. She doesn't want to give them the slightest chance of seeing her. We're not going to move from here, because if we start the engine, those impala will look at us by default and they then could see her. I don't know if you saw that. It was a very subtle movement of her tail flicking up, and it's because there's a robin to the left of her going krrr, krrr. That's a bit of an alarm call. And she's just flicked that tail up as if to say, I'm not hunting you. Shut up. The impala haven't been affected by it, though. They're not looking up at the robin. Right, apparently we're going to quickly go to a bird who has made a kill. I don't know where it is.
We've come to this waterhole that we've actually been checking quite regularly recently, just because it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And as it gets smaller, obviously the density of fish starts to increase. And so it makes fishing relatively easy. And we've got a prime example here of these beautiful saddleboard stalks. You see that one there's got a catfish that it's actually been playing around with at least for the last 5 minutes or so. And I think it might just be trying to remove the very sharp ends of the whiskers, because it looks like it's in the right position to swallow, and then it drops it back down into the ground and starts fiddling around with it even more again. I know if humans get pricked by those catfish, I thought that was a swallow this time. If we get pricked by those little, it literally goes into the mouth and then straight back out. But if we get pricked by those small little whiskers, and because the catfish hang around in very dirty water, it can cause quite a serious infection in our skin if it pierces into the bloodstream. So maybe that's what this saddleboard stalk is trying to do. And so, I mean, since we've been here, we've seen saddleboard stalks, which are the ones in frame. We've seen hammerkorps, which aren't here at the moment. They might have just taken off. And then just above the waterhole, there's a fish eagle, a juvenile fish eagle that's just arrived. So 3 fishing specialists all around one tiny little spot. And it's all because it's just easy to catch fish. So from the saddleboard stalk on the left-hand side, if you go straight up, we'll see if we can show you it's yeah, I'll keep going. Can I go more right? There we go. So, and just look at how messy and mottled this eagle is. So this is a juvenile. It doesn't look anything like its parents. And this one, I'm sure, would be relishing the opportunity because it takes quite a while for these fish eagles to develop the skill to hunt. And, I mean, it's just must be much easier to be able to catch fish in such a small little puddle like this now. See, it's also quite interesting to see the different feeding techniques. I mean, there we go. That saddleboard stalk has eventually swallowed it. Yeah, okay, there, just behind the saddleboard stalk, that brown bird is the hammerkorp. So whilst we hang around here and watch them drinking, see if they might catch another fish, we'll send you across to Lauren, who's got another bird for you.
Here we have the most poorly named bird in the Lowveld, the brown-headed parrot. Yes, look at the magnificent greens. Greens is one of my, well, green in general is one of my favorite colors. But the whole range of greens, if that makes sense, I love. I love this scheme of greens. And I cannot believe that somebody named this the brown-headed parrot. Yes, I know, I'm also shocked. There's 2. And they're always here. And I wonder if they've got a nest. They do nest in cavities of trees, so they utilize holes that have, and off they go. Just like that. They utilize holes that are already in the tree. And they don't make them themselves. The beaks are sort of not designed to do that. And they're monogamous, so that could have potentially been the male and female right there. And I've got a feeling there's chicks. But sadly, I think the chicks are in a hole at the other side of the tree, which is rather unfortunate. How exciting. But imagine calling that bird a brown-headed parrot. I want to meet that person. We are on our way to the hyena den. We really hope that the cubbies are out and we can have our daily catch-up with the spotted hyenas. And as we do that, I think James has got his patience pants on with Miss Tandy.
Not much has happened since you last left us, although she did look like she went to sleep briefly. She now seems to have lifted her head up again. I can hear a herd of buffalo in the distance as well. And I can hear the leaves rustling where the impala are moving. I think there are 1 or 2 left where they were, but the rest are moving in a diagonal, kind of down from there towards her and towards the road. But I can't see exactly, so you can just hear a little bit of fur rustling in the leaves. Yeah, there's definitely a herd of buffalo not too far from here now. Anushka, she won't come back into estrus until that cub is nearly independent, so she, from my limited experience of seeing her cubs, seems to come into estrus around about when they're a year old. So not for some time. Tlalamba was born when Tamba was only just a year old then, yeah. So, between 9 months and a year. But it could be after that. She's an old leopard. I'd be surprised if she produced another litter after this little fellow has gone independent. All right, let's go back to Eric now, whose birds are having a feast.
Yeah, they certainly are having a feast, and we keep noticing on the edges of the water that there are small little catfish that seem to have died. We've actually just got a little bit of a bigger visitor coming to join us. There we go, an elephant has just made an appearance. And it'll be interesting to see how it reacts around this waterhole, because I mentioned it's the last water, I'm sure hundreds and hundreds of buffaloes have come in, lots of different animals have come and made the water quite dirty, so I doubt it will go and drink out of the water. But see where it's going, straight towards that little hole there. And the sand acts like a natural filtration system and just cleans the water so much more. And so it looks like this elephant might even try and dig for some water now. And look at the size of its tusks, quite small. Looks like it's by itself. Wild K, you're asking if animals are at risk for bilharzia? And I don't think so. I think their stomachs are so much stronger than ours, and from the moment that they're born, they've been exposed to all of these little germs and bacteria that are out here in the wild, where we've completely detached from it, and so they build up natural antibodies and resistances in their systems to fight off those little diseases that humans are susceptible to, but animals like these elephants, probably I don't think would catch bilharzia. Here we go. There's more coming. I was just saying, like, it looks like it's quite small, but it was obviously a young bull that just tried to get ahead of the herd, because the whole herd is coming running down the river now. This is awesome. Oh, they just keep coming. Let's see how many we can count. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 so far. 7, 8, 9, and there's about 10 of them in total. And it's incredible, we didn't hear them coming at all. And so they must have just arrived, and they probably walked straight down towards the water. 11. I love how elephants, as soon as they know that they're starting to get close to a waterhole, they get so excited they start running. That one even took a little tumble. This is awesome. There's more coming. So I'm just going to give it some time before we reposition and see if we can actually see them drinking. There's a really small one. Oh, it's fast. I love how the ears pin back and you can actually see them flapping as they run. That might be the last of the herd. It's actually quite a decently sized herd. I'll give it 2 more minutes and then I'll reposition slightly closer to them and we can see them digging in the sand. Yeah, okay. I'm going to move forward. It looks like we're in the clear. So there's also, we were sitting here just admiring the bird life, and then all of a sudden this big herd of elephants came down. We had no idea they were on their way here, and it just shows why birding is such a good idea sometimes, especially if you're in one spot for long enough looking at all of the different species of birds. Sometimes you find a whole bunch of different animals coming. Okay, it looks like the herd has changed direction again. And they're all going down to the edge of the bank where the water's closest to the surface. See, there's 1 or 2 that might already have some splashes on them. See that one's getting very, very closely followed behind a little small one. So I'm sure that's a mother and a youngster. There we go. So you can see this one in frame now is splashing and flicking some water around. And so, I mean, they just they'll dig and just wait for the water to seep through, and then they'll suck up. I'm just keeping my eye on the rest of the herd who's moving back past us, straight towards the waterhole where the storks are at, which I'm quite surprised at. It looks like they're moving a little bit past it, actually. Yeah, they are moving past it. A couple of them with their trunks up in the air, smelling. Oh, and there's some coming, so I'm going to move quickly. It's like a scene from Jurassic Park here, with just noises coming from all over the place. The noise that I heard was one on the right-hand side of us, and that's where the whole herd came running down. So don't really want to be in the middle of elephants rushing down towards the waterhole. I'm sure this will be fine. But these ones here are nice and close, and they're digging really, really nicely now. You can see the one flicking with its foot and scooping up the sand. Okay, we're going to send you to James quickly.
They're coming here. She's just moved up closer towards us. I'm not sure why. Obviously the impala are coming this way. Look at her slinking into the grass there. Now I can't move, so now we have no view at all. But I will tell you that she is just off the road there. And the impala, I don't even want to stand up. They are just sort of through the trees there. So now we have no view of anything. But the action is still afoot. The other guy behind me is saying that he can see the impala coming towards her. So I know this can be a very frustrating sort of a thing, but, well, this is what happens when you're out here. And I always like to say in situations like this that people think that wildlife filmmaking is all about action. It's mostly about waiting. Okay, let's go back to the playful elephants.
WildEarth relies on support from viewers like you to carry on broadcasting our daily live shows. A small donation goes a long way in helping us on our mission to connect the world with nature. Please visit our support page to see how you can help and become part of the WildEarth family.
Have now dug it deep enough. Now they're getting what looks like some really good water. You can see just a quick little spray of the remaining sand. There's this one elephant on the right of these three that's slowly but surely creeping in. And it's being very, very tentative because it will probably get shouted at if it takes up too much space. As soon as this little one turns, you'll see it looks like it's been sprayed all over the face. It's completely wet on one side of the face. Looks like there's one elephant that might even be trying to dig its brand new hole. Well, it's stopped now, actually. Oh. we were actually commenting, we've been driving along the river for maybe about 20 minutes or so, and we were commenting as to how deep some of these holes can get that these elephants create. And there was one hole that was probably close to about 1.5 meters deep that had water inside. And so those elephants have been digging that deep for at least the last couple of months, and I'm sure they keep coming back to the same holes if they can, but they will happily dig their own. And if you just look at that youngster, how far it has to stretch down. It's really cool, the 3 buns, and that one just goes straight in between the 3. So there was a little bit of shouting and screaming at one another. Now it all seems like they've settled down, all found a decent hole where they're getting good water. And it's starting to warm up really nicely, so we might see them splashing themselves a little bit more. It does seem like they're pretty intent on trying to get as much water as possible for now. You see, at the end of the string, she might just flick out again, just to again get rid of any sand that she's sucked up. There's that little flick. And look how much further that youngster has to reach down. I mean, it's almost going down on its knees. It's got its head very low down. Just shows you how long the adult's trunk is compared to the youngsters. And not one of them yet has touched the water that the birds are in. See, and there's one here on the right-hand side that's going to push the 3 away, looks like. There's a little bit of a standoff happening now. There's this one that came quite aggressively towards the 3 of them, but the 3 stood their ground, and now it's having second thoughts and it's backing away. Interesting. The SG, you're asking how elephants discipline their young, and they do so by pushing them around, but they've got quite a lot of vocalizations that we hear. And if you're listening and if you heard that quite big trumpet, that's probably a way of just giving a warning that one of the youngsters is stepping out of line. And it will tend to happen around water like this where there's limited resources, and if one brave elephant bull comes close towards another one, you might find that it will get shouted at by some of the bigger, older females. If a teenager is really, see there, I don't know if you heard that little, so that was a warning to one that was just getting a bit too close. See, there's that elephant, it looks like that youngster's actually suckling now. See that one on the left has got its trunk hanging down by the leg.
We also have some suckling of our own. I'm on my favourite place on Djuma Game Reserve, which is of course anywhere that the Djuma clan are. And we've managed to, wow, we're witnessing right now a very precious moment. Rib robs and our cubs. Now from what I can gather, the cubs are in top to toe position, top to tail. We had some interesting yoga moves earlier, but all has calmed down. And the cubs seem to be, wow, another cuddle puddle. I don't see any other hyenas around. But I saw them all this morning, don't worry. When I went to make my coffee first thing in the morning. I'm not a very nice person without coffee. Most of the Djuma clan were at the kitchen. I don't know what they were sniffing and licking, but all of them were outside the kitchen. Yes. Ringleader, of course, was Swazi. There's a small clan that we have here, but the clan is very, very important to hyenas. It's not quite the same as a wild dog pack, but it's a matriarchal clan, and it's really, really important. And it's almost like a fission-fusion unit, if you like. It's very fluid. It's very dynamic, a hyena clan. And the size and compositions will change. And this is primarily due to the movement of males. Normally, 97% of all males in a clan will disperse. Dispersal is very normal for male mammals, even leopards. It's a biological instinct that tells them to go away and find a new gene pool in order to increase their mating opportunities, which will allow them to continue on their own bloodline. So the size and composition of a clan will change. It won't stay the same. And what's really fascinating, even hyenas that have been brought into captivity, let's just say zoos, show that exact same hierarchy from the clan that they were obviously taken from. For example, if they were a high ranker's son or daughter, even although they're in a completely new position in a zoo, they still take on the role in that position. And the sort of hierarchy of any clan forms again in isolated groups in captivity. So that just shows you it's very much born within them, the importance of the hierarchy within a clan. Look at this little leg. I'm not entirely sure that's comfortable. Douglas, what a great question. We actually call them cubs, hyena cubs. And for a long, long time, it was thought that hyena cubs committed siblicide. We also call this canism. It's two words meaning the same thing. And what this means is one will kill the other. It's quite common in birds. Chicks, the first one that hatches from an egg, will kill the other chicks before they even have a chance to come out of the egg. So it was always thought that hyenas generally produce twin litters. Sometimes, in rare occurrences, you'll find that they give birth to 1 or 3, but really they give birth to 2 cubs, which is twin litters, and it was always thought that the more dominant one will kill the other. This is completely not true, and that myth has long been debunked. Now, if you look at these cubs, they are in no way, shape or form trying to kill each other, but there's a sort of innate biological drive that causes them to strive for dominance. They both can't be at the same level in the hierarchy. One cub will always be slightly more dominant than the other. Whether it's the stronger one, the bigger one, I don't know. But from the minute they're born, they're striving for dominance. And eventually that will settle. They settle it out between themselves. Normally it's the bigger one, generally speaking, that can get better access to that prominently positioned nipple. And therefore they tend to get more access to milk, they tend to be a little bit stronger, and they become the dominant one. Sometimes cubs will die, and it can be from a number of reasons. Disease, weakness, not getting enough access to milk, injury. But it hasn't been killed by the other cub. So yes, sometimes we find Ribbon actually lost a cub. She gave birth to 2 in her last litter. And we had Paddy for quite some time. But Paddy was part of a twin litter. And the other twin died very, very early on. Sadly, we lost Paddy too, but that was much later on. So yes, hyena cubs can pass away, they can die, but it's not directly from the other cub in the twin litter, Douglas. Indirectly, yes, by maybe the other one being far too boisterous and just taking all mum's milk, but directly, no. Okay, I'm going to sit and enjoy this. This is far too precious with that little leg sticking up there. So from my matriarch, I'm going to send you over to another matriarch.
It's probably one of my favourite times with the meerkats is when they're about to leave. I think they're going to be another couple of minutes and they're going to go foraging. But one of our colleagues was just chatting about dominance in hyenas, in spotted hyenas, and how how does it come about that one will become dominant over the others? And relating that to meerkats is there's obviously that dominance thing going on here as well. In other words, you've got this matriarch, this alpha female, and her pups, one of the pups, will tend, if they live long enough, and that's, again, in these kind of environments with these land, that's $1 million question here. What is the survival rate of these things? And depending on predation, that can be very, very high. But typically, one of those pups will end up being a dominant one, but not necessarily so. As long as mom's around, and that's like same with hyenas, well, then all is good and well. The problem is if not, then it could be one of the alpha, not the alpha, one of the other females. So remember we were saying that the meerkat group typically has this alpha female. She's normally the only one that has the pups. But you do occasionally get these cases where you get a subordinate female. So if you've got a subordinate female that's got pups and they're surviving, something happens to this one. It is not, it's not unheard of that one of those could actually take over the dominance if anything happens to the alpha female. But typically, it's going to be her pups, and within that, there'll be that constant sibling rivalry. So if she's got 4 pups and you've got 2 males, 2 females, well, it's likely that one of those females will become a dominant one. But that'll be literally probably the strongest one out of those 2. But these things can change on a dime. We were chatting with the Veronique, our meerkat habituator, and she was saying that at one stage the Xhosa group, that was a group that we were following a couple of weeks ago, that the badger killed the pups and 2 of the sub-adults, and that group was a very big group. I think it was almost 20 individuals at one stage, and now they've been whittled down to 4. And Veronique was actually telling us yesterday that even out of those 4, there's now 2 missing. So, it doesn't matter how well you've got your lineage planned and who should be taking over. Anything can happen out here. It is the wild. And, I guess that's just part of being a meerkat, eh? So there we go. Jeanre's getting it nicely now. That little one's going to dig a little bit, maybe a bit of basic burrow maintenance. There you go. And again, this burrow maintenance, what we're seeing here is this is their link to survival in these areas. Making sure that they've got adequate bolt holes to go down, making sure that their primary burrow system is well maintained. Because even in these big burrow systems where you've got multiple different burrows, you can say, well, there's a whole lot here, but they've got to maintain them, because you can get another predator or something else taking up residence, yellow mongoose, whatever, and they need to be able to have enough holes to move pups into. So I think they're going to go foraging fairly soon, so we're just going to keep sitting out here until they do so.
So these elephants are still around the water hole. A couple of them have finished drinking, and it looks like they're, instead of throwing water like I thought they might be doing, they're actually throwing sand around. So you can just see every now and again this white puff of sand as they toss the sand onto the skin. So they'll be aiming for little cracks and crevices in their skin. Just that sand is such a nice exfoliation to try and get rid of little ticks or parasites, and just to itch the skin, I guess. And I believe we were talking a little bit about the different matriarchs in the different species, and elephants, especially in herds like this, is a matriarchal society. And myself and Owen have been spending a little bit of time trying to work out which female is the matriarch, and we think it's this one here that's drinking. And the reason being, she's got access to the best water, and she was the first one to initially come past towards this area, and so she basically was getting followed by the rest of the herd. And if you look just in between her front 2 legs, there we go, that youngster's actually just finished drinking and is now drinking from her, and has decided to drink some more water. But it would have been her decision to come down into this area to try and find something to drink. and she would have known that this is a really good spot. And that's probably life lessons that she learned from her previous matriarch, who could have even been her mother or her auntie. Kiki, you asking if elephants are the only mammals that will dig for water? In this area, I think so. I mean, a lot of animals will use the elephants' water or holes to drink water themselves. Otherwise, I'm not sure of any other animal, or mammal at least, that will dig for water in this area myself. I haven't seen it in the river, and this is pretty much exactly the only place that we'll see them digging. So I think it would probably only be elephants. Now, I mean, a lot of the time the elephants have got the weight and behind them to scoop enough sand to dig deep enough, and they've got those very prehensile trunks of theirs that's also capable of scooping sand out, whereas a lot of other mammals in this area don't necessarily have the correct limbs to be able to utilize them as well as elephants can, with their trunks and those big heavy feet and sharp toenails to dig into the water. And I also think, a lot of other animals in this area aren't really as fussy with the water that is here, and they'll just go for whatever's available. And so this surface water that's directly behind the elephants in shot, the ones where the saddleboard storks have been fishing, is probably sufficient for them to come and have a quick little drink. And not very many mammals need to drink as much as elephants do on a regular basis. See, Owen, on the one on the right-hand side, looks like it is trying to dig a little bit more. It's still quite a young elephant, so it's probably learning and figuring out how to do it. But it's quite a nice example of how it uses those very sharp toenails in the front of its foot to push away the sand, and its trunk probably to sniff and feel to see if it's getting wetter. And if it thinks that it's up to something, it will probably just start continuing and digging more and more. So it looks like these elephants are going to hang around here a little bit more. It doesn't seem like they're going to be moving away. So we're probably going to continue on with our drive and see if we can find anything in the next half an hour. But in the meantime, we'll send you across to Lauren to see what her cubs are up to.
Cubs are awake, everyone. Oh, yes. Double. Bellies full of energy. And now it's time to explore. I remember the days when we first found them. Just for any of you that maybe were not with us then, we found them on the 27th of March. I'll never forget it because I'm convinced they were a matter of days, if not a day old. The cartilage of the ears were actually pinned out, if you like. Dark and very limited movement. Really able to. And their eyes were not fully open. So hyena cubs are born a little bit more precocial than other cubs, for example, lions and leopard, but they're still classified as altricial, but their eyes are slightly open. Not fully wide open, just slightly like a little slit. This is how I really believe we'd been following rib robs for some time, and I really believe we found these cubs at a matter of days old. And to see them transform into what we have in front of us right now is just amazing. They're still very young, but they've just grown so much. Anushka Ribbon wouldn't lose her ranking. So she was the lowest ranking hyena, all 6 of them. And she had a tough time. It wasn't easy to be Ribbon. And she obviously decided to go against the status quo, challenge that proverbial ladder and climb right to the top. I don't know how much planning was involved, but Ribbon saw an opportunity when Corky got injured and went for it. I think she gathered army of males, which is very unusual. Ribbon really has done something that I feel is unusual and incredible. So Ribbon wouldn't lose her ranking. What would happen? The only way that Ribbon could sort of not be the matriarch anymore, for her to be overthrown. You think clan lost Prrivate, which is very, very sad, and we only have 5 females. At the top, closely followed Water and Tima, and then we have Heart, who I've not seen in a while. We have June, and then I think interpretation of the Djuma. So it would really, for Ribbon to be overthrown, it would take another female to.
It's almost good from the time you
Yeah. Oh, hello everybody. That was quite a quick turnaround. Here we are with Thandi. She disappeared, interestingly. We had a moment of panic. Well, slight, what shall I say, anxiety, where we drove forward after 10 minutes of having watched the spot where she disappeared, and she weren't there no more. And so we carried on down the road, fully expecting not to see her again. And then she popped out about 100 metres down the road or so. And the impala were long gone. They're sort of heading in this direction. But I think she's going to spend the day having a snooze. Just got to get on the radio quickly. Go ahead. She's just off Central on Djuma, about 100 metres or 300 metres west of Junction Chitakatlan. Not much longer, no. Sorry, everybody, I've got 3 radios going in my ear at the same time. We're going somewhere else now. We'll stay with Thandi for the next little while. Nigel will be here another 15 or 20. In fact, probably most likely 10 minutes.
So one of the interesting things that we've noticed this morning compared to any of the other mornings that we've been here is the amount of burrow maintenance that's going on. And I know I don't want to harp on this, but you know, it is crucial that they maintain these. And I think I mentioned it a couple of drives back, that when we got here, they'd obviously settled in here and done a lot of maintenance to begin with. And then it had kind of died down. And then there was that move from here quite far south to that tiny little burrow system, and then we lost them for a couple of days, like 4 or 5 days. They were kind of AWOL, and then they've rocked up here again 3 days or 5 days ago, had their pups, but they haven't done a whole lot of burrow maintenance. But as we're sitting here, there's one individual. You got this matriarch that's standing out in the open here. Nicely, Jondra's got in frame there now, and that little one that's just popped up next to her now, he's been digging like crazy and doing a huge amount of sand shifting and making sure these burrow entrances are open. And in fact, where he popped out now next to her, he somehow linked it underground. There's a burrow much closer to me, halfway between where they're standing and where I am. And it's obviously linked underground there somehow. So he went in, this one was digging a huge amount at the entrance, went underground, and then popped out next to her. She's just doing normal routine grooming there. It's always remarkable just how clean animals are in the wild. You know, you think they're dirty in that, but they're not. I mean, I think there's some that are probably more so than others, but you know, by and large, the animals are, as long as they're in good condition, you know, they're getting enough food and that, they're not nutritionally stressed, in other words, then parasites don't tend to be a huge problem for them. So when there's nutritional stress, that parasites start taking having a big impact on them. In terms of diseases, I mean, these little guys are susceptible to things like rabies, canine distemper, or distemper would be extremely unlikely in them, but not impossible. But in terms of rabies, that would be a big one for meerkats. Look at that. So remember we were saying how this is the particular one that's doing a lot of burrow maintenance. There he goes, straight into it. There. Javert has asked, if a meerkat dies down one of the burrows, would the other meerkats remove it? I don't think so. I would be extremely surprised if they did. You know, obviously that meerkat would decompose down there, and I can't see them being there being any huge benefit to them moving it out. Yeah, if they're in a very, very small burrow system, and a small burrow system can literally be there's one entrance, one mound of sand, that's what they got. My guess is they would actually just move away from that burrow system rather than trying to drag this meerkat body out, and you know, that just, I don't think they would do that. Highly, highly, highly unlikely. And he's popped out right next to me again. Look at this. You see, so that burrow is definitely linked to the one where the matriarch is sitting on. And he's just doing a lot of, and you see how they shift the sand. He goes all the way down the burrow, and then he'll come out, and then he starts moving away the pile of sand that he has dug out. And you must just, when you kind of cast your eye over the, oh, he's got an armored ground cricket. Look at this, look at this. This is brilliant, 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 brilliant. He's eating armored ground cricket. This is fantastic. Oh, my word. Oh, yeah. Hey, yeah. Yeah, I'd also be wiping my face if I ate one of those puppies. Yeah, and it's still alive. Oh, my word, we've seen a kill. We have seen a kill, folks. See, sometimes good things come to those who wait. Liz has asked a great question there. When does the babysitter eat? When they're looking after the youngsters all the time. So I've seen babysitters actually eat close to the burrows. I mean, here's a really good example. You know, let's hypothesize and say, well, the whole group's moved or foraging already, and there's one babysitter left over here. An armored ground cricket like this one, and it's like still watching Gendre there. This little thing is like saying, Gendre, help me. But yeah, if this babysitter is sitting out here, and this armored ground cricket comes walking along, there's no question that babysitter would grab it, because it's an easy meal right there. And also, when the rest of the group comes back, that little animal will have time to forage in a very close proximity to the burrows. And there's always things to be eaten around here. And then it's not necessarily the same individual that does babysitting duties day after day, because that would be a little bit harsh on it. So, you know, and you think there's less pressure when there's a slightly larger group of meerkats, where you get multiple individuals that can do this babysitting chore rather than just being reliant on one or two individuals. It's coming back to, this is brilliant. It's coming back to this armored ground cricket. But remember, we were saying they give off this liquid, and it's a kind of reflex bleeding that they do. There are a number of other species that do this, some to it with more potent effect than others, but it's very, very distasteful, and most things that eat them do so with long teeth. Huh. That armored cricket's just like lying there, still very much alive, but he's thinking, ish, my day didn't get off to a good start. We're going to keep watching these meerkats here, but I'm watching this disgustingly gory, gross scene playing out. This armored ground cricket is now walking up this thing. I think he might be obscured a little bit there by sand, yeah, but anyway, he's walking out there. His entire guts is dragging out behind him, and this one's doing yoga over here as well. This meerkat, it's like woohoo! Look at me. We're just going to sit here and watch what plays out here and enjoy this incredible.
Now, she's just popped her head up. At what does she look? Dundee, what have you seen? The impala finally walking this way. She's definitely seen something. Of course, while we wait for her to do something, it's worth pointing out that if she did manage to savage an impala now, the grossness would all be red, whereas, of course, the grossness in the armoured ground cricket is yellowish green. And that's because the molecule that carries iron through the blood is not the same in each different kind of blood. So in the insects, a lot of insects, it's called hemolymph. That's what they call the blood, and it's not red like the hemoglobin that carries iron in our own blood. Does it carry iron? Hemoglobin, or maybe the substance that carries oxygen. I've forgotten what hemoglobin does. Anyway, hemoglobin's red and hemolymph is not. I think it's got to do with iron. I really should remember that. Right, we're probably going to leave Tundi to carry on hunting now, because I think that if we stay here and the impala come closer, we're going to disturb her, and she's obviously in a precarious or strained position as a parent. So we'll leave her, you go back to the hyenas.
I don't think the car is a good idea, little ones. Let's hope they don't eat the car. I have had that in the Masai Mara, where the cubbies chew on the tires. Are they under the car? Ribbon's actually repositioned. Don't worry, she's still there. She's just gone into the shade. And the cubbies are coming closer and closer to the car. Look, they're looking at the bandolier. It's watching the bandolier. Are you watching the bandolier? They're so inquisitive at this age. They want to know everything. But there's still a little bit of fear holding them back. And from my observations, one is definitely... and they're very habituated to humans. And as I always say, this is a good thing. For selfish reasons, of course, but for the animal. You don't want the cubs to get a fright, heart rates go up, cortisol levels pump through their body every single time they see a vehicle, because throughout their lifetime, they're going to see a lot of vehicles. And therefore, oh no, please don't go back inside. I like your company. Now, I nicknamed them Bow and Tie, and it's just a nickname, and the only reason I did that to do today is look like a smile. Photography, Photoshop.
I just apologize for the Lawrence audio. We're just battling a little bit on that side. But it's good having you back with us, I must admit. We rigged that. I'm just amazed this individual is still going at it. This is the one that gobbled up that armoured ground cricket. And just coming back to that armoured ground cricket and what he did there, what we've noticed with these armoured ground crickets is that so many things that are eating them, the shrikes, meerkats as we've seen now, and things that I've seen in the past, they typically are going for the abdomen, the big soft part, and then leaving all the crunchy bits. And I think as well in terms of the chemical defense on them, there's probably not much of it in the abdomen itself. So, but then it also makes you wonder, well, why have this big, huge, juicy abdomen if it's kind of causing you to be a target? That's just a random thought. And there's the little alpha. She's now moved across to the left from where she was. I really think this group is doing well, and I'm optimistic about these pups surviving. Again, assuming something doesn't eat them. Megan has asked a great question that I don't have an answer to, and I do and I don't. Megan has asked, who and when is it decided, who decides and when is it decided that they must do burrow maintenance? I really think that is just programmed into them, genetically programmed. When they see the burrows are sort of not in great condition, they'll start doing burrow maintenance. And when I say this particular individual, what I mean is that we've just noticed it way more than with the other meerkats. So it might be, maybe he's just good at it. Maybe he's, he's teaching others how to do it. But I certainly don't think it would be any leadership thing in there, like the alpha saying, okay, now you and you have got to do burrow maintenance. I doubt whether it would be anything like that. Because we've seen every single meerkat in this group, including the sub-adults, actually doing burrow maintenance. But this one seems to be doing it a lot more this morning than we've seen. When we sat with the Xhosa groups, or that Xhosa group, all of the individuals in that group would do burrow maintenance as well, during the morning at this, when the group is together. So it wasn't just left to one individual to maintain the burrows. They're talking a lot now. Again, you probably can't hear it from the distance that we're sitting at with the mics, but they are giving these lovely little chirping sounds. So I'm guessing they're not far now from leaving and to go foraging. And I will be right at some point. Maybe in an hour or 2 or 3, but I'll be right. I wonder if he's going to go for this armoured ground cricket again, because he casts his eye over towards it every now and again, but I think he's really eaten all the good parts on it. But it's kind of like it's now about a metre away from where he schnaffled it the first time. And but he keeps watching it. But I don't think he's going to go for it again. He says, no, all the good bits are gone. That's nature. Look how tough nature can be sometimes. It's not all easy. Sorry, I didn't get that question. Something about winter and meerkats? Okay, there's a good question. In fact, a very good question. If food is scarce in winter, why would they be giving birth at this time of the year? So typically, they would be giving birth in the summer months. Gestation is about 11 weeks. Well, it's 11 weeks, not about, it's 11 weeks. And it is very, very dependent on food availability. We are going into winter. Food is becoming scarce, but our rainfall season, this past season, has been a decent one. And when I say decent, we hit our annual average, which is between 300 and 350 millimeters of rain in the year, and it was well timed. So although food is becoming scarce, there were still good resources available, and as we're sitting here now, there are still good food resources. Very interestingly, in terms of these armoured ground crickets that we've been seeing a lot of, those outbreaks are very, very driven by rainfall events. In fact, a lot of these outbreaks in the Kalahari are strongly rainfall dependent, and not just rainfall, but the timing of the rains. So even if we got our annual average, but it was too early or too late, you might not get the things being triggered as they would if the rainfall was shifted to a little bit of a different time. And what we've been seeing with this outbreak of armoured ground crickets, we didn't have that last year. There were a couple around, but very, very few. And the year before, there were none that I recall seeing. So with an outbreak of these things, you probably find that they've just had such good and abundant food resources that's enabled them to increase the length of their breeding season. And they can have multiple litters in a year depending on food availability. So that was a very, very good question, and well timed, that question as well. So Striped Horse has asked the question, what is the likelihood of a meerkat making it to adulthood? I would say probably 50%. Predation is incredibly high on these animals, even with their extremely good vigilance. I mean, there are any number of predators arrayed against them. There's potential food shortages. There is disease. There's unintended events, things like, well, not that any of these things are intended, not from the meerkat side, but there are other events like burrow collapses because of antelope walking over them. We've actually seen that on Tswalu. We've had very good examples of that before. So, sheesh, on a little animal this size, the odds are really stacked against you. And that would really translate into, well, that's why these groups are super vigilant. If you compare it to pangolins, there's also kind of a relatively small animal. It moves around by itself. Eyesight's not particularly good. Hearing's not particularly good. Sense of smell is, but they are just like armor-plated to an extreme degree. So everything out here has some kind of defense strategy. But when you're looking at a social group like this, you're small and you're producing multiple litters in a season, and those litters can be 3, 4, 5 in a litter. That's telling you the mortality rate is probably quite high. And also the fact that you get these groups that can go up to 20, 30 individuals and then just crash down to 2, 3, 4, and it all disappear completely. That tells you predation is very high. So I would comfortably say 50%, sometimes even higher. Yeah, it's a tough life out here. Nature's not all fun and games. We sit behind a camera or in a pair of binoculars and we enjoy it, and we tick our lists, and we put a hot water bottle on our laps. But nature can be really tough and really harsh. But this is the beauty of it. It's going out there, experiencing it, learning about it, and understanding that it's all important. And even if we don't have the answers, and I'm a great example, Flip, I mean, I'm just learning something new every day and just getting asked questions that I've got no idea about. But we'll go out and we'll try to figure it out, and we'll ask people. And that's the beauty, is being able to learn about these things. And just the other side is just experiencing it, the sheer absolute beauty of nature for what it is. Look at this. Who can't enjoy sitting with a group of meerkats in the Kalahari, or elephants in the Lowveld, or leopard, or gorgeous sunsets and mountains and trees? Join us again this afternoon. It's been an absolute pleasure having you with us always. Have a safe day, and we'll see you later.